Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next episode of the Woo Woo Girls Guide to Infinite Wisdom with your host, Mary Oquendo, and the lovely and talented Laura Sanger-Watkins. Hi, Laura.
Hi.
And today, I just kind of threw this up on Laura because usually when we do an interview for someone, we both know the person. But this time, Laura does not know Jamie Saloff. I know Jamie because we met, we're online friends, and we have the same coach. And we're accountability partners. So we see what each other's projects are going, and Jamie is just chock full of information. She's got some wonderful projects coming up, and that's what we're going to talk about it. So hello, Jamie.
Hello. Hi, Jamie. Very nice to meet you. Same here. Thanks for having me.
So Jamie, tell us a little bit about you.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I wear many, many hats, and I love it that way. I'm an author, first and foremost. I'm a healer, certified metaphysician. I've trained with Fellowships of the Spirit in Lilydale, and also under Donna Eden and Bill Collier, a little bit under Lisa Williams. So a lot of training in that way. I am also somebody who helps people publish books, and I do a lot of design work on that end of things and walk them through the self-publishing process, especially people who never have published before and need help. And so all of that somehow comes together in a mishmash of who I am, and mostly, more than anything, when I'm wearing my healer hat and my medium hat, I am helping people transcend pain, fear, and grief. I have had a lot of family members who passed in my family, and I found growing up that I needed somebody to help me through that, or some way to get through that, and so this is kind of like evolved into that as a way to help my family, and then it trickled out into helping everybody. Kind of like Edgar Cayce says, first individuals, then small groups, then the masses. So this is all kind of evolved from that. Very cool.
Pretty cool. Very cool. So I know you have a project that's right on your front burner right now. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
The one thing that I'm working on right now is, I'm working on actually a couple things. My latest book to come out will be The Marvelous Messages Hidden Within Pain, Injury, and Disease. That's going to come out probably the first of the year. And then my transformational healing book is going to have its 10th year anniversary edition coming out, hopefully November 1st. I have my fingers crossed on that. There's a few things that have to happen for that to match up. The stars have to kind of align. But so I'm working on those. I have a bunch of live events coming up as well. But The Marvelous Messages is kind of like my pet project. It's something that I've been working on for a long time. I was always the person that people called and said, what do you think is going on with this? And, we would talk about pain, especially in a way that's different from what a doctor would do. I want to put out there, first and foremost, that without doctors, I would not be alive. I'm a cancer survivor, so I would not be here without doctors. And if you need one, please, go see a medical doctor. But there's also, like an ethereal connection and an emotional connection, and I work a lot through that on the psychic level. And so that's kind of one of my pet projects.
So now with your book, when it does come out, because the book sounds absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, I would love to read that. It's coming soon. I just have, it's one of those things, like they always say that plumbers have the worst plumbing and web designers have the worst websites. And so, when it comes to book design and putting my books out there, I always seem to put them on the back burner while I help other people. And then I was like, oh, yeah, I need to get that out there. So when it just needs to be formatted and put out there.
Okay, well, I'll be harassing you about that.
Good.
And when it does become available, how could somebody, if they wanted to put on their calendar, I need to go look for this book, how would they find the book?
All of my books are available from fine bookstores anywhere. Usually you have to order it or get it online. Um, Several of my books that are out there right now do not have e-versions available as yet because at the time that I initially published them, I really wasn't into that. And of course, it's gotten so huge, and I've had to go back and rethink that, which I did. But then again, I got caught up in helping everybody else do it, and so mine just kept sitting there. And but for the most part, you can go into any bookstore and they can order it for you, or you can get them online.
What about through your website? Will there be like links and dates and
Absolutely.
launches?
My website is undergoing a miraculous transformation. I like to say that whenever I get high, I get really great insights. And so I was flying to Florida, and I was obviously really high.
Wow, I was thinking something else.
I know.
Yeah, that was my first thought as well, too.
Wow.
So anyway, yeah. So whenever I get high like that, all of these wonderful insights come to me, and usually the whole time I'm on an airplane, I transcribe like crazy. And this whole blueprint thing came to me about marketing and about the Marvelous Messages piece was in there, and your money DNA, which I'd like to talk to you a little bit about. But it just all seemed to kind of open up to me. And so over the years, I've had countless websites. I love building them. It's kind of a hobby of mine is to build them and kind of have fun with them. And I finally figured out a way to kind of integrate everything into one thing and still be kind of a cohesive understanding of what I do and who I am. And so that my website should be up mid-October. That's in the works. It's kind of the thing where I have the curtain pulled back, but behind the curtain, lots of things are going on. So as soon as I open the curtain on that'll be open mid-October sometime, because I have a live event coming up. So I have to have it up by then. And then I can focus on the books and get the rest of those books out there.
So by the time this airs, this podcast will air at the end of October, so your website should be up and functional. What's the website address?
It's JamieLSaloff.com.
So that's J-A...
Yeah, go ahead.
It's JamieLSaloff.com.
And if that's too much to remember, you can get there from just Saloff.com. And I always say it's easy to remember. Just think that everything's on sale, and they're marking it off, but there's no E. It's like somebody has crossed out the E for the sale. So everything's on sale, and they're marking it off. Saloff.com is kind of like a gateway site for me, and you can get to all my sites from there.
Awesome. Very awesome. You may mention something that when you're high, meaning high elevation on the plane, you get a lot of stuff done. You know what? And as soon as you said that, I realized I'm the same way too. I could get so much accomplished in between airports.
Yes.
So I'm not the only one like that. Is that something that's just like for everybody, or it's just like the specific people are kind of like in tune to that? Because I've always made a joke that if I'm behind on something, I just need to fly somewhere, I'll get it done.
See, I'm the opposite of that. If I'm flying somewhere, it's like mostly because if I'm flying somewhere, it's because I'm going somewhere to have fun, so I don't want to do anything. Although I can read a whole bunch of books on an airplane.
See, I always take like audio books, but usually I end up taking lessons or things I want to learn. I love learning. I love education of all kinds. So I remember I was on this one flight, and it was like, imagine the seat that you're sitting on and the people who made it, and all of a sudden I'm in an airplane, and it was just kind of like really tripping me out. There was nothing under me, and the way she was describing it, it was like you were just kind of seeing it like dismantled or whatever, and it was like, I don't think I want to do this on an airplane, but.
Now, I'm curious about the topic about the book. I'm in a 12-step program, and I've had the same sponsor now for, my actual anniversary is October 8th. I'll have 20 years sobriety. Wow. And my sponsor is he's a funky guy, and they usually tell you not to have male sponsors, but he's the person that kind of tricked me into going into AA in the first place, so I've stuck with him. But when I call him complaining about physical pain, he always says, quiet down and ask what message it has for you. And the first time he did that with me, I thought that was crazy. But I also noticed that when for example, menstrual cramps, if they were really bad. And so then I would say, what's wrong? And then I'd get this image of sadness or lack of attention or, a woundedness or something like that. And so then I would be like, okay, I need to do something to, I need to do something nurturing for my inner feminine. And then, sometimes with my back pain, and I know I'm kind of influenced by Louise Hay because I've had that book for a really long time, You Could Heal Your Body. So I know when you've got lower back pain, it's usually a fear of financial insecurity or it's some kind of a lack of support. So if I have a lot of back pain for a while, I always kind of dip down and breathe into the small of my back and then try to hear what it's trying to tell me. And usually I don't get much because either I'm not super intuitive or I've got my own mental blocks because my own fears seem louder than whatever message I'm trying to get. Is that kind of along the lines of what you're talking about in your book? Connecting to the part that's pain?
Yes and no, and let me qualify by saying this, is that when I first had issues with my health, I had Hodgkin's disease when I was 24. And then I found that I couldn't get well after that, and my husband and I used to joke that every 2 years I would almost die and go to the hospital for something, and something different all the time, and it was like, why can't I get well? And when I first found books like Louise Hay, and I think it was Christiane Northrup, who Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom, who started, saying, it was the first time I heard somebody say, hey, tap into what, your body is saying. And so I really believed in that, and I really liked Louise Hay's book, but I found it didn't work for me. And I kept, trying to do the affirmations and that sort of thing, but it didn't work for me. And then that's when I wrote my book. And when I wrote my book, I was thinking about some people in my life who needed it to be simple and uncomplicated, but also needed it to be really unique just for them. Because what I found is with a lot of the stuff that's out there, they would give you a list, and it was like, okay, if you have this ailment, then this is what you say, or this is what is wrong with you. And I was like, no, this doesn't fit. And, maybe on some deeper level it did or something, and I wasn't picking it up. But, maybe I think they were just kind of leading me to write what I did. Now, unfortunately, due to the time constraints that we have here, I can't do an example to, kind of tap in and show you how that works in specifics. But pretty much, there is a process of tapping in, but it goes much deeper than that, and it goes into kind of the mechanics of how something works or how something is malfunctioning. And then it goes beyond that into what I call the fix. And then there's also a piece where we get into what I call the DNA of the thing. So when I do that with clients, that usually runs like an hour and a half to 2 hours to do that process. But when they get done, not only have they discovered, some people have instantaneous healing, but some people also just find, wow, they now have action steps to take care of a pressing problem in their life that they had been putting off. And it's all interconnected, I find.
Very cool.
If somebody wanted to contact you about doing that for them, what's the average cost for something like that?
I have different levels depending on what I do, and I don't really like putting that on the recording since it could change.
It's all custom and it's individual. I get that.
And
right, but that information would be on your website, though.
Absolutely, and I have what I call an entry level. Say I do what I call quick chats on Facebook. They're like $27. So there's an entry level for people, and on those I can do. I usually can't do the in-depth healing parts, but I can do mediumship, and then there's levels and steps from that. And I haven't fully revealed some of that yet, so I am kind of holding back, I guess, because of that. But it's very, very cool stuff, and the people who have worked through it are just usually blown away. And I love when I'm working in the process, and you know when people get that aha and they get excited and like they kind of like start talking a mile a minute. So when we go through this process, what I find is there's kind of this moment where there's like the skeptic and, well, okay, and well, if you okay, I think so. Well, maybe this, and then there gets this place where you see that they're like kicking in, where it's like, oh my gosh, oh, you're right, and then like all of a sudden there's like kind of like this thing that bursts through, and they're like, oh my gosh, I did not even realize that this was like right in front of my face all the time, and then when we get into the DNA connection and the ancestry and how that all ties in, they see that it's been right in front of them all along, and they've either just pushed it aside or they just totally didn't see it. You know, it's kind of like not seeing the nose on the front of your face kind of thing.
Right. That's so cool. It sounds like a neat thing. When did you realize you were a medium?
I went and
Curious.
I wanted to be a healer. Well, actually, I had written the healing book, and I felt like I needed something besides words to help people. I felt like it's great to give them these methods, but sometimes you just need somebody to touch you and say it's going to be okay, and I wanted to learn more about that. And I went, and a friend took me to Lilydale, and I had a reading, and in the process, I was telling her all of this, and she goes, well, you know, I realized that, you know, I was talking about I wanted to become Donna Eden certified, and I couldn't make it happen at that time. It was like the next class was starting in like 4 weeks, and I couldn't make it happen that quickly. But she said, hey, you know, I realized you wanted to do that, but I have this school myself in Lilydale, and, you know, maybe you'd be interested in that. And that ended up going from 2 retreat weekends to a 2-year program that was really intense. It's really cool because you get to train with many different masters instead of just one.
Wow.
But I went into it thinking I want to be a healer. I never really thought about it as being doing the mediumship part of it, even though I probably had been doing it all along and I didn't know it. And when it finally opened up for me, it was kind of like a Harry Potter moment where he gets the pictures of his parents, and his parents are like talking to him. They don't talk in the movie, but they move around in the pictures and wave at him and that. And it was like, oh my gosh, it was like suddenly those doors open for me, and it was like I had access to all of that more clearly, and the training really helped to hone what I knew. It was like I knew that I knew things, but I didn't really know how to use them. It was like sitting down in front of the cockpit of an airplane, and you're like, you know this plane flies, but you know there's all these buttons and levers, and you don't know how to work them. And then when you have the training, and you know how to work all of that, all of a sudden you can fly this plane, right? So that's kind of how it was for me. I'm pretty sure that my first real experience was when I was maybe 6 years old, and we were moving to Ohio. And I told my mom, I said, I'm coming back to Pennsylvania. And she said, yeah, you know, like whatever, you know. And I said, no, I know I'm coming back, you know. And she's like, well, not today, you know. And I'm like, no, when I probably like when I get married or something, you know, I'm coming back. And she's like, well, what if your husband doesn't want to go to PA? And I'm like, this voice told me I'm coming back. And then I forgot about it. And then when I told my mom, oh, my husband and I, you know, he just got transferred to Pennsylvania, we're moving back to Pennsylvania, she was like, you told me that when you were 6.
Wow.
You know, that's interesting. I think a lot of times as children, things happen in our lives, and we just kind of like brush it off, and then you realize when you look back, it's like, wow, you know, maybe I ought to have paid more attention to that. I mean,
I'm sorry, go ahead. Well, I was going to say, my niece, when she was about 3, my sister was changing the baby, and my niece is a little older. She was 3, the baby was a baby. And she said, out of nowhere, she just said, Grandma Rothfart. And our grandmother's her last name was Rothfarb. And so Amy my sister Amy sort of turned to her and was like, Lorelai, what do you mean? She goes, Grandma Rotfart here. She's very happy.
Aww.
And my sister, like, all her hair stood on end. You know what I mean? Because this was like totally out of nowhere. And Lorelai never met her. You know, Lorelai was 8 months old when my grandmother died. And so that was sort of like, you know, she called me. She goes, I don't know what just happened, but, you know, and I said, hey, believe it. I said, the doors are pretty, you know, the veil's pretty thin for the little ones because they just got here from there.
Right, absolutely.
You know, so that was something. But, you know, you ask her now and she doesn't remember it, and she's just like, you know, shrugs. And so it's interesting because my grandmother came to her, but nothing.
When I had my first mediumship, you know, reading, which, you know, like I said, was when I went to Lilydale. That's what the medium there told me. She said, you have never shut it down. You've always been open to it and just let things happen. And I was kind of confused by that because I didn't consider myself to be like her, but yet when I started thinking about it later, I realized, oh yeah, I was the one that people called, and I did, you know, seat of your pants astrology, and I did tarot cards, and I did, you know, and they would ask me, you know, for advice, and I would just, you know, pull it, like I said, from my seat of my pants kind of thing. I didn't know that it was like a gift. It was just something that I did.
Very
you
cool.
know, when I was a kid, and I remember this now because I was doing it up until I was a teenager, but I would just like pick up rocks off the ground and explain that this stone was used for journeying between, you know, from going one place to another, and I would just like do stories about where the crystal had been beforehand, and I would just be picking up rocks off the ground and doing this. And shut it down, seriously, actually, you know what, partially shut it down until I was almost in my 30s, and all of a sudden it's like there was like these floodgates, and it just like forced it open, and then I got involved with crystals again. I didn't think I had a choice.
You know, I had an opportunity to meet Nina Brown, who calls herself the Crystal Singer, and I asked her, we did some work on a book together, and I had asked her, you know, what should I do with my crystals and that sort of thing, and she was like, oh, you don't want to ask me because I just talk to the stones. And she's like, you know, you probably have to do this ceremony or you have to do this or that. And I'm like, no, I want to know what you do because you really are powerful. And so when you say you just talk to the stones and get the stories from them, that tells me that you're really tapped into them, you know, and I just really can respect that. So
that's pretty cool. So tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, what I would like to tell you a little bit about is what I call your money DNA.
Oh.
And I don't just mean like some cute little saying, oh, your money DNA. I want to talk about like your real DNA is connected to this. And to explain that to you, let me give you an illustration. And that is, imagine that you're a flower, a seeded type flower. And the way, you know, a flower works is, you know, it grows, it adapts to its environment. And let's say you're in the cold white north where I live, where we get about 250 inches of snow a year. So that flower really has to be tough and adapt to that rough environment. For example, in this area we have frost-proof roses. And they probably have them everywhere, but it's just something that here it's kind of a necessity. So you can imagine as those plants evolve through the seasons, the seeds that drop, and you know they have a memory then inside those seeds that say, hey, you know, you got to be resistant to this cold, and you have to be strong against the weather, and that's in the memory. Now, if you take those seeds down to, say, Florida, that's still in that seed's memory banks, right? It's still in its DNA, its seed DNA, so that, you know, even though it doesn't have the cold weather, it still has that message inside of it. I must survive. I must, you know, protect myself from the cold. Now, the good thing of that is if they do have cold down there, that seed, you know, will remember and be more resistant than maybe its brothers that are next to it. But it also then has this message in the back of its mind or in its cell memory to, I must survive, I must survive. So now let's relate that to ourselves and what I call our money DNA. In that, think back to what happened, especially in the U.S. in 1929. You have this whole generation of people where the stock market crashes and there's no money. There's a Great Depression. For people overseas, the connection would be like during World War I and World War II. They had similar problems with finding food and finding money and having jobs and that sort of thing. So these people went through this tremendous this trial, right? It's no more different than the cold that these seeds and the plants went through, right? And this goes into their memories. Now, the way cells work is they work off of emotion. They feed off of that, so that when you have certain emotions, especially heightened emotions, the cells get this little mixture of let's call it, it's like chemicals that like they feed off of, and it's like a chemical mix from all your hormones and that. So when you have certain emotions, there's a certain mix of chemicals that goes into each cell. Has like these little receptors. So the more heightened the emotion, the more that cell remembers that. Okay, are you following me so far? Or am I like totally over your head?
I get it.
No, we got.
Okay, so now think about this. You have these people in the Great Depression. They're worried. They're fearful. Some people have committed suicide. They don't know where they're going to get their next meal. They don't know how they're going to feed their children. They don't know if they're going to have a roof over their head. So you have this tremendous heightened emotion that goes into their cells. Then they have children, and their children have children. So now you have in your DNA that same little message in the back of you. I must survive. How am I going to pay the bills? And we wonder sometimes why we have those messages. And I'm here to tell you they're in your DNA. So like the flower moving to Florida, you may actually have money in the bank. You may actually have a job. You may actually have a house with a roof over your head, but you still may be frantically worried about money, or you may have a similar emotion to what your relatives had.
So Jamie, my mother was raised by parents, who were of the Depression, and they were very frugal their whole lives. And my mom was a single mom, so you add her frugal DNA to 70s freak out because she's a single mom raising 3 kids, one of whom had a chronic illness. And, she was definitely freaked out about money all the time. And she actually kind of found it to be, like, she sort of treated it like it was spiritual to want less and to have less. And, but she was always fearful and afraid. And even though I'm not loaded or anything, but I'm comfortable. I'm okay. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
We're maybe 3 paychecks away from total disaster instead of just one, which for the first time in my life, that's very luxurious. But I still freak out. Now, is it possible that what you're saying is that a lot of reasons why I freak out about money is because I've inherited this from my mom, who probably inherited it from both her parents?
Right. Yes, that's what I'm saying. And here's what I do about it. At least there's several different things you can do about it, but here's one of the ways that I work on that. I do something, a modality called restructuring. And in that, the best way to explain what happens is another analogy. So I think probably everybody at some point played with making a house of cards, where you lean the cards together in little teepee style and stack them. And some of us were not very good at that, like me, but a lot of us tried it. So think of each one of those little cards as a belief that we have set up. So, for example, the one I like to use because most people can relate to it is, imagine that at 2 years old, you maybe got bit by a dog, and maybe it was rather traumatic, and so now that 2-year-old is afraid of dogs. So that's one of those little cards in the house of cards. Well, as the child grows, let's say Billy down the street has a dog, and it's a big dog. It barks, it jumps. It's just kind of scary. It shows its teeth, and so he decides, I don't want anything to do with Billy because Billy has a scary dog. And so that belief is like the second level that has grown from that little house of cards. And so now we have more beliefs attached to that first one. Follow? Mm-hmm. Then let's say later in life you get offered a job working, running mail routes and putting mail in mailboxes. Well, you decide you don't want to take that because you're afraid of dogs, and you can't take that job because it would just be too stressful. So that's another, all of these beliefs and fears are all part of this house of cards. So in restructuring, what we do is we go in and we pull out one of those cards. Well, what happens when you pull out a card in a house of cards? Boop, they all fall down. Absolutely. So what happens is all the beliefs connected to that house of cards have then what I call reshuffled. And it's actually a process you can feel inside of your body if you're attuned to it. It's kind of interesting, actually, how it feels. And when you take out that card, okay, so now this person is no longer afraid of dogs. They don't have to be afraid to go to Billy's anymore. They don't have to be afraid to take that job anymore. So this works particularly well with things that are tied to pain or emotion. So that anything that you can feel either physically or emotionally, that process works really well with. And that's actually a little bit different from what I do with Marvelous Messages. So that it's kind of like another outcropping or another step beyond what Marvelous Messages does. So it's kind of like peeling an onion, where you can go deeper and deeper and deeper into the process.
I definitely believe that at least my journey into healing and, myself, so that I could be a better healer for others is, definitely cyclical. Like, I feel like I'm crossing over the same issues over and over again, except each time I'm getting deeper and deeper and deeper.
Right, and a lot of times what you would do is if you work through this process that I'm talking about, is you would find that there are tie-ins back to the DNA, and if you then work through those, then you find that some of them are very valuable. We call them survival strategies at times, but sometimes those strategies are very valuable. One of my girlfriends asked me, well, should we just eradicate them? And I said, if you're a drug addict and you need to stop heroin right away, you could compare that to somebody who becomes born again, an evangelical type of situation where instantaneously that disappears and they're forever changed. And that's a good thing, because they don't, want to go back and take heroin anymore. But something like, for me, I'm like driven. I just always want to be doing more and doing better and doing better things than I did in the past and greater things than I did in the past. That's not necessarily a bad trait, and I don't really want to eradicate that. But there may be certain aspects of it, if I don't have good boundaries, or if I, work 24/7 and never play and have fun, then I might need to kind of dial that back a little bit. So that's, you kind of need to pick and choose what needs eradicated and what needs, like adjusted. It's kind of like turning the volume up and down on some things.
Get that. Because, a lot of the coping mechanisms, are strong because they worked, and if they're, the only problem is, in recovery, a lot of these things that people that come from traumatic childhoods, they have these defense mechanisms that protected them and kept them sane while they were in that place. But then when you're a grown adult and you're in charge of your own life, like, you don't need them anymore, and now they're becoming a block.
Absolutely.
But, so I see how it's valuable to examine them, even if you don't need to get rid of all of it, maybe just some of it.
Absolutely.
For example, my sense of humor, I use humor to deflect. I use humor to try to make light of things, because I don't want my negativity or downers to be a burden on anybody. And in a way, it's great, but I also have been told on more than one occasion that, my sense of humor can kind of keep people from knowing the truth about what I'm really going through. And it's really hard for me not to use it when I'm having a serious conversation with somebody, or when I'm uncomfortable. I always want to make a joke. And, it's tough, because people, especially when you're in a spiritual circle, people are asking you to drop the mask and be yourself. And, for me, that's kind of hard. And I don't want to get rid of my sense of humor. I mean, it's definitely, you need it. I've got 2 college boys. I can't live without I can't live without it. But at
I
the
raised
same
two
time,
sons, so I understand that comment.
and you know exactly what I'm talking about. So it's necessary that I keep my sense of humor or I'll go crazy.
Right.
But at the same time, I need to know when to use it and when to stop using it as a shield. And that's something that I have been working on, and I'm trying to be more, and I hate to use the word authentic because it almost sounds like a cheesy trend right now, especially on
Sure.
Instagram. But my true, I like to say truest, my truest self, in that circumstance, I do try to remember that my humor, I don't need to keep people out with it. Like, as long as I'm not using it as a shield and I'm only using it just because it's my natural expression, then fine. But that is something I've had to look at. And I think that's my good example, at least for me, of like, examine something that you developed to survive that turned into something good but could also be a block.
That's a good example, though, I think.
Well, it's close.
That's an awesome example because I don't have one.
Well, I've been a person in recovery. I've been doing all kinds of healing work for 20 years now, because once you put the bottle down, there's still a lot of stuff left. I mean, the reasons why you drink and the reasons why you use. I mean, and, AA is great to help you stop drinking, but it doesn't fix the reason. It doesn't fix that
Right.
part of you that's broken. And, and of course, it's a spiritual program, and they tell you to take care of the mental, the physical, and the spiritual. So, yes, I've gone to therapy, but I've also done a lot of spiritual work as well because it's a spiritual sickness. Carl Jung once used it. He said that alcoholism is a low-grade quest for transcendence. You're looking to transcend, but you're taking the spirit way out, the spirit in a bottle, rather than the spiritual path. So
awesome. I've never heard it put that way, but that's...
Yeah, Carl Jung said it like that. The alcoholics are actually on a spiritual quest. They just are looking in the wrong place. And, of course, screwing themselves up in the process. And their entire families. But that's a whole other thing. But, yeah, I like the idea of examining the card and on a DNA level. And I have to look at my money stuff, too, because, it is... I've gone on one to the other extreme where I either I'm afraid I can't spend anything, and then of course I tell myself, I don't make enough, and then that becomes my reality because I'm constantly saying I don't make enough, I don't make enough, I don't make enough, and I want to stop that. I want to, when someone first explained what scarcity thinking was to me, I mean, it lit up every single bell in my pinball machine because that's exactly what I've been. I was raised with scarcity thinking. There isn't enough. There's never going to be enough. And, you have to hold on to every single thing you have because, you might need it, when I don't know what my mother was expecting to happen, but, when World War IV hits the fan and, you need to have all your ducks in a row.
There's where it goes back to her parents then, see, because they were thinking that a war was going to hit, and they were afraid that it was going to be in our backyard. So, when you're saying that, to me, that all lights up because I'm like, yep, it trickles down right back to her parents and maybe even to theirs.
And, and also, too, I mean, my generation, your generation, I mean, we grew up with the threat of nuclear war all the time. I mean, they were all, we had the Cold War with Russia. I mean, being a child, I'm the child, I was born in 1968, so all of that, before the wall fell, we thought we were going to go to war with Russia, at any time. And, we'd be living in a nuclear wasteland. At least, those TV shows they used to show back then, like The Day After Tomorrow and things like that. It was terrifying.
Well, a funny story about that is that when I was born in 1960, and I was still in the crib at the time. I mean, I don't physically remember, but I emotionally remember. And my mother said that thunder and lightning hit in a field right behind our house. And she said it was such a tremendous boom that she thought that the bomb had gone off, and she ran into the crib and grabbed me and threw me on the ground and covered me with her body to protect me.
Aww.
The result of that was that whenever there's a bad storm, I can always tell. I can feel it in my body. It feels different. I just know. And I pace and I get nervous and I can tell it's a bad storm. And my husband will be like, it's just a storm. And I'll be like, I can tell when it's different. It's like my body knows that particular feeling because of that. So
wow. I get that feeling too, but it's usually in my left ankle because I broke it on a trampoline.
I have that too. You're right. That's a different kind of feeling.
Yes, but I could tell you when it's going to rain too. Although I can't predict like bad storms. Not yet.
Yeah, my husband does that with his knee too.
Yeah, my ankle is the barometer.
So that's pretty interesting. So what you do with the money DNA, you help to work the money problems out of the DNA.
Whether it's money, whether it's some other kind of difficult life situation, or whether it's again pain, grief, fear, I have a layer of processes that I go through, and it depends on how much needs eradicated for that particular person, how deep they're willing to go, and I like to work differently. A lot of people work on a coaching level where you buy into a complicated or expensive coaching package, and I find that it's better to have kind of like an a la carte packaging where people can get to the levels that they need and work at the pace that they need to work. Because some of this stuff that you have to work through, if you do one of these calls, you may need a week, or you may need a month, or you may need a year to fully integrate that and work that through. So if you're locked into a particular time frame or package, you may not really get what you need. So I like to do it in a way that it can be very individualized. I'm very keen on that because that's what I needed, to find my healing. So that's how I do it that way, or why I do it that way.
Wow, that was pretty cool and very, very interesting. Do you have anything else to add? We are coming up on the end of the session.
Just that, again, that please check out my website. The easy way to remember it is Saloff.com, and watch for my forthcoming books.
I'm very excited about your book.
I'm pretty excited about that, too. And now I'm really going to get on your case about finishing it.
I need that.
Get on her case. I want to read it.
It's already written. I just had to get it formatted and out there. So.
All right. Very cool. Jamie, thank you so much for letting us interview you today. And I will see you in our little group on Facebook, and I will most certainly be harassing you on a stepped-up scale in the very near future.
All right. I look forward to that, and it was a pleasure being on your show, so thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming.